Hello everyone, my name is Sniping is Fun, and I welcome you back to a quick little celebration video that I kind of wanted to do given how much this system means to me in my history of gaming, and the fact that we just celebrated within like a last week it turning 25 years old. For those of you that don't know, on June 23rd of this year, which is about a little over a week ago now, or around a week ago, whatever, the Nintendo 64 turned 25 years old. On June 23rd in 1996, it released in Japan, and then we got it later on in September. So technically, it's not 25 years old specifically for us in America yet, but the system itself, as old as it is because it first released in Japan, is now officially 25 years old, and that just makes me feel freaking old because when that system came out, I was 6 years old. Now I'm 31. Even that's not an old age, and it's sad that I see anniversary after anniversary of some sort of video game, some sort of video game system, some sort of anime, some sort of whatever the heck, and it all happened when I was younger, and I'm just looking at the clock, and I'm like, where the hell did the time go? Jesus Christ. But yeah, the Nintendo 64 turned 25 years old, and my memories of that system are so crazy. I remember when I first got it too, barely. I didn't get the Nintendo 64 when it released in 1996. I didn't get a Nintendo 64 till like near the end of 1999. I didn't. I like in '96. I was still really playing like the Game Boy and like the Super Nintendo, and then like a year-ish after that, a year and a half after that, was when I got the PlayStation, which was my first non-Nintendo system. Then we moved to this house, which shows that we've been living here way too damn long. And I guess as a moving present when I was 9 years old, because we moved to a new house, I was moving away from my school and friends and whatnot. My mom just bought me a Nintendo 64. I don't know if it was for any specific reason, but I definitely remember, when I received it. You see that kitchen right there? That's where she handed it to me. So I can clear as they remember turning around and her handing me or some sort of like how your memory fades when you get older. And I'm not that old, but like I said, I definitely can barely remember when I got that. But the Nintendo 64, the memories I had with that system, I had it like it was the Nintendo system I had for a little over 2 years before the GameCube came out. I mean, I still play the N64 after I got the GameCube. I still play the N64 after I got the Wii. I still play my old systems from time to time when I have free time and decide to want to jump to my old systems. N64 being one of the ones I tend to do it the most because there's a lot of games I love on it. But the Nintendo 64, in that time span, it was probably the biggest multiplayer system I had. I mean, I played multiplayer on the Super Nintendo, but it was usually like a two-player type thing. I played a bunch of multiplayer on the PlayStation 1. It was more of a two-player thing outside some games that use the multi-tap. And I did buy the multi-tap. Remember the multi-tap on the PlayStation 1, which was like the triangle thing? Not like the brick like the PS2 had. Remember when I got that? But like the N64 came with 4 controller ports from the get-go. It was a big multiplayer system for me, my cousins, friends, all back then, to the point where I only had 2. This is the funny thing, and I know my cousins Vito and Caitlin and Ashley and all that will remember this. Probably, I would assume vividly, because this was definitely something, because that was like the system we played a lot of. I used to only have 2 really good controllers. The normal standard Nintendo, controllers. They plug in the system. And then I get 2 third-party wireless controllers, and these things worked like crap. You put the things in there, you put the batteries in the controller. It was like an N64 controller that gained weight. It had like, how the gap between the 3 things on the N64 is like this, and there's 3 prong type things. It was more like one big shape, and the wireless stuff hardly ever worked. I remember us playing like Pokemon Stadium, and like I gave the crappy controllers to like my cousin or whatever, and it was like it took a minute to get them to register like doing stuff on Pokemon Stadium. But yeah, they would definitely remember that. That was definitely a fun moment. Good thing now I have 4 good controllers for my N64, so wired connections, all licensed Nintendo controllers. But yeah, the N64 was definitely a memorable system for me because here's my thought process, and this ties into the PlayStation 1 as well. Like the 4th generation of gaming, the Super Nintendo, Genesis, and Game Boy, is what got me into gaming. I'm nostalgic for the Super Nintendo. I'm nostalgic for the Game Boy. I love them dearly. But the fifth generation is what started solidifying my love and interest in gaming with the PlayStation 1, the Game Boy Color, and N64, which only got finalized and fully solidified when sixth generation came around and I had the Xbox, Game Boy Advance, GameCube, and PS2. It was the first generation where I had everything outside of Dreamcast, but I don't really count that so much because the system died within like a year. So I had everything outside of Dreamcast, but that didn't last the whole generation, so it doesn't fully count, but it does too. But it was the first generation that I owned everything. And like those two generations, the fifth and sixth generation, are what I'm super nostalgic for, what solidified my love of gaming in my push to want to be, considering myself a gamer. And that's only been continuing with the seventh generation, from the Wii and PS3 to the eighth generation with the Wii U and the PS4 to the ninth generation with the Xbox Series S and the Switch. Yeah, like it definitely is continuing from then on. But like I said, that generation right there is what really started pushing my main interest in making gaming a major hobby for me. Was the N64 alongside the PlayStation 1. And the N64 was a big multiplayer system with kids from school, friends, family. Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 were some of the biggest things we did, battling, the mini games, the quizzes and stuff like that. Super Smash Brothers, the Mario parties, GoldenEye, WWF No Mercy, WCW NW Revenge. What else was on there that we really did multiplayer on? A bunch of other games. Milo's Astro Lane, which is a bowling game, a lot of little things that I loved on the N64. Wave Race, Excite Bike, which that was definitely something I remember vividly going over a friend's house, taking the cartridge with me to play it on their system with one of my controllers, and then my friend, two other kids from school were there, and we all just had a blast playing Excite Bike 64, which was my introduction to the Excite Bike franchise. And I would love Nintendo to do another Excite Bike that's like Excite Bike 64. But yeah, the Nintendo 64 is definitely a system that's probably one of the most nostalgic for me, one of the most memorable for me. Probably one of my favorite systems of all time. It may have had, compared to the PlayStation 1, less games, and, Nintendo sticking with cartridges probably hurt them in the long run, which now they're slowly building themselves back up with, like, the Switch 3 generations later. 4 generations later. GameCube, Wii U, Switch. Yeah, 4 generations later. So, yeah, 9th. But like it had a lot of memorable games. Nintendo games had a lot of memorable third-party games. Still, it was a big multiplayer game system. It just, everything about that era is super nostalgic to me. From like, I could see old TV ads, old magazine ads, and it just brings back a sense of like nostalgia to me from PlayStation 1 and 64. But like, I don't know what else really to say. It's just like, it feels so crazy that system is now 25 years old, because it feels like, I wouldn't say only yesterday, because it definitely doesn't feel like those people, the people that say, oh, it feels like only yesterday when I got the system. No, it feels like a lot longer than that. But I can remember when I got the system, and I can remember playing that system like a crap ton back then, renting a bunch of games. I remember when I got the system and I bought a bunch of used games. My mom took me shopping to get a bunch of used games. WCW NW Revenge was probably one of the first games I got. My one friend Marlon, we won the tag team titles together in that game, and I never won the tag titles again. He was Chris Jericho and I was Bret Hart, and I never went back and won the tag titles ever again on that game. Once we unlocked Harlem Heat, I stuck it, with us being a tag. I went after other championships in that game over a few times, but that was the only one I never went back and won anything else with again, because I wanted to keep us as the tag team champions. Wave Race 64 was probably one of the early teams I got. Ocarina of Time, I remember borrowing my friend's copy for like a few days just to play the game before my mom bought me a copy. And I gave his copy back and had to start my file over again. Good thing I didn't make it super far. I think I only made it to like the Dongo. In that time, but I had to start all over, which definitely hurt. I remember Majora's Mask pre-ordering that game. I remember playing that demo kiosk at Toys R Us, and I think Majora's Mask was like the first game I ever pre-ordered. I think so. I think that was one of the first games I ever pre-ordered. I was doing the whole Pokemon trading card league at Toys R Us, and then I seen the kiosk. I loved it. I got into Zelda because of Ocarina of Time. That was my first game in the series as far as I remember, unless I played something before that and I just don't remember. But yeah, definitely I think that was the first Zelda game I played was Ocarina of Time. So that alone is nostalgic to me. So I really wanted to play Majora's Mask, and I really wanted to pre-order it, and I think that was the first game I ever pre-ordered with the whole gold cartridge and everything. Yeah, and I loved Majora's Mask just as much as Ocarina of Time. So it's it's the little things that I can remember from back then. Definitely can remember that. But it just feels so weird that it's now 25, which makes PlayStation 1 I think was about that age too. I think that's a year before. So last year PlayStation turned 25. And then before we know it, the GameCube and the Xbox and all that are going to be 25 years old. I mean, Xbox original is already 20 years old. The original Xbox is 20 years old. These years are going by way too goddamn fast. It just makes you feel old, but old in a nostalgic way too, which is a double-edged sword, if I would have to say so myself. But the N64, I love it. One of my favorite systems of all time. It wasn't perfect, but it had a lot of great games. And I'm glad that nowadays it's getting more love than I think it did back then. And people are recognizing it more for how good of a system it actually was, despite some of the issues and drawbacks it had. And I would have to say, I loved it. It was one of the biggest, earliest memories I've ever had in gaming, that in the PlayStation 1 and the Super Nintendo and PS2 and GameCube. Like that era, that mid 90s to like the early-ish mid 2000s, that about 8 to 10 year gap was what really defined me as a gamer. And I think a lot of people have that moment. Some of the older people probably have that with the 80s into early 90s. Some of the younger gamers probably have that with the mid 2000s and the 2010s. Like every gamer is different, but like I definitely think people in my age range that grew up with like those systems would be around that time span, like the Super Nintendo and Genesis into the PS1 and the 64 into the GameCube and the Xbox and the PS2. Definitely those three generations alone had like a sense of love that I think a lot of gaming nowadays doesn't really have. And I think the only generation that really kind of sparks that with me now is probably this generation, like the Switch and the Series S. Like I think are slowly getting there, more so than generation, the 7th and 8th generation did, even though I still like the PS3 and the Wii and the 360 and the PS4 and the Wii U and the Xbox One. I think those generations were lacking something that those generations before had, that I think this generation now is slowly starting to get back a little bit of, not a lot. But yes, N64, thank you for all the memories with my friends and my family and playing a bunch of games on you. You were a great system, and I enjoyed playing you. And 25 years, thank you. My name is Sniping Fun. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you later in the next video. Bye, everyone.